When we planned our visit to New York City, we decided to take a 6-hour walking tour with New York Tour 1. They have several tours to choose from. This one starts at Times Square at 9:30 a.m. and wraps up at the Freedom Tower at 3:30 p.m. Every tour will be a little different depending on your guide. Jared, our guide, was full of knowledge and fun facts that you would only get on this tour. This is part 1 of this tour, so turn on the big screen, let's make some popcorn, and let's catch up to the group in Times Square, already in progress.
Who is it named for? Yes. Absolutely correct. Fierce fist bump of the day. The New York Times newspaper. They moved here in 1904, and just like the New York Herald newspaper moved to what is now called Herald Square. What's famous at Herald Square? How about Macy's? And the Thanksgiving Day parade, the largest parade in New York City, every Thanksgiving Day ends at Herald Square, right? Named for the New York Herald newspaper, right? So this was essentially the city's way of saying, hey, if you move further away from the crowded downtown, we'll rename these areas in your honor. Everybody follow? Now, what are the 3 things that Times Square is most famous for?
New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve, absolutely correct.
The ball dropping.
Everybody see the ball? Everybody see it? Anybody not see it? Everybody see it?
Oh, yeah.
Now, it takes 60 seconds to descend down that pole. It takes 60 seconds. How many people will jam into this area, 10-block radius?
1 million.
Very good. Mel, right on the button.
We went on the bus tour last night.
There you go. They went on the bus tour. They actually remembered the facts and figures. Now that's the more impressive thing, that you remember the facts and figures. No, about 2 million people. What's the biggest single practical problem? Times Square, New Year's Eve.
Getting them out?
Restrooms. Lori's got.
Yes.
Oh, getting them out. Well, we do have is it Angela?
Yes.
We have very serious crowds, but we're used to crowds in New York. We do crowds really well. Everybody follow? Lights.
Broadway.
There you go. 2 and 3. 2, all of the lights.
Advertisement.
Advertisements. Absolutely correct. Turn around and look at this, Angela. Where it says made for the summer, Samsung. That's the largest video board in the United States of America. It starts here on 46th Street, goes all the way down Broadway, takes a right on 45th Street. You don't even notice it.
That's a humongous advertisement.
Right, because of all the other advertisements and video boards in the area. Advertisers love this area. Now, why do they love it? It's the most visited place in the United States. Last year, for all the wrong reasons, it surpassed Paris as the most visited place in the world. Right, because people won't stop going to Paris. Everybody follow? Everyone with me? All right, so the advertisers love it. And not only the 44 million pedestrians, you see this 7th Avenue here? See all these cars going down 7th Avenue? Every 24 hours, approximately 200,000 vehicles will pass through this area. And they're all looking out of the windows, catching the images. Right? What's that? Absolutely correct. Mel has noted that New York City taxi cabs are the color yellow. And the reason for that is the founder of the yellow cab company, John D. Hertz, read a study published by the University of Chicago that said yellow was the easiest color to recognize from a distance. You can see it coming from a distance. Now, we do have the green cabs, and of course we've got Uber, and we've got black car service, but the true traditional taxi cabs, how many do we have, Mel? 14,000. 14,000. Now, if you include all the other stuff, like the Ubers and the limousines and the black cars and the green cabs, you'd be close to that number. But no, pure yellow cabs, 14,000. And what's the third thing that Times Square is famous for? In fact, well, I can't really, you see where Gabby is standing? I can't really crash her party where my colleague Gabby is standing. She's standing on a map of all of the Broadway theaters. The theater district in Times Square are sort of synonymous. There are 40 Broadway theaters in Times Square. 40, right? Now, what's the difference? In fact, it's the largest group of performance theaters in the world, in the whole world. Largest grouping, 40 in one place. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between a Broadway show and an off-Broadway show. And by the way, yes, Angela.
Broadway show, the orchestra is live. Is that the music?
Well, that's not the technical distinction, but as a practical matter, you're generally correct.
Price of the ticket.
Well, again, absolutely correct, Lori. As a practical matter, the Broadway shows are much more expensive. What's the hottest ticket on Broadway today? What show? Hamilton. Absolutely correct. If you're lucky enough to be able to buy it at face value, it's about $850 for an orchestra seat.
I had no idea.
That's face value of the ticket. And the reason they raised the prices, they said the scalpers, or not the scalpers, the ticket brokers, the ticket broker, I think, charged about $1,200 for Hamilton for one seat. Ticket broker, people that bought the tickets and reselling them. Everybody follow? Right? So as a practical matter, Lori is absolutely correct. But that's not the technical distinction.
On Broadway. It's on Broadway.
Now that's my trap door. That's my trap door, Chris. Chris fell through the trap door. Everybody says, that's why I'm surprised you guys took a while for you guys to get there. Oh no, the Broadway theaters are on Broadway. The off-Broadway are off-Broadway. In fact, that's not correct. That's a big misunderstanding. The difference is only 4 Broadway theaters on Broadway, Chris. Only 4 Broadway theaters actually have a Broadway address, like the Winter Garden where the School of Rock is playing. Right? I think that young girl might like the School of Rock. She might like a nice Broadway show, or The Lion King, or Aladdin, or something like that, wouldn't she? But no, size of the theater, 500 or more seats. It's a Broadway theater, regardless of its location. 499 seats or less, off-Broadway. And the really small theaters, 199 seats or less, the experimental theater, off-Broadway. Everybody follow? Off, those are the $5 a seat. Actually, a buddy of mine appeared in an off-Broadway that I wanted to go and see him and to support him. $15. I said, you gotta be kidding me. There's 4 people in the audience, they want $15. What are you gonna do, right? But normally off is about $5, right? Everybody follow? And guys, we shoot to go to and of course, if you have any questions at any time, we're very intimate here. Don't hesitate to ask, all right? Now, we start here in Times Square. We're going to head over to Rockefeller Center. We'll visit St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is the largest Roman Catholic cathedral in the United States. After that, we'll get on a subway and we'll head over to Grand Central Terminal, which is my favorite building in all of New York. I love Grand Central Terminal. Now, unfortunately, we used to go to the New York Public Library before we went to Grand Central Terminal, but they have a policy that's long-standing that they're now enforcing: no tour groups allowed inside the library. So if you want to visit the New York Public Library, I'll tell you how to do it. They've got public tours at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. We'll tell you all about it. But the only thing we could do if we went over there is look at the exterior of the building. So it's not a good use of time, just to go and see the outside of a building. So what we do is we bypass that and we spend more time at the other places, like the Grand Central Terminal. We'll head down to Wall Street and we'll do some of the financial district sites, and then we will take a ferry ride. Frankly, what we do is we push you a little hard in the beginning. We push you a little hard because we know you're going to run out of energy about 1 or 1:30. So we try to do most of the walking earlier in the tour to have total with the lunch and the ferry ride. When we get back, we'll be rested. Then we end the tour at the 9/11 Memorial. But right next to the 9/11 Memorial is the famous Italy. Have you heard of Italy? Yeah. This is like Italy, but it's EAT. It's quite famous. It's an Italian food mega market, and many people would like to visit there. So what I would sort of suggest, instead of like eating a big heavy food court lunch, get something light. And then at the end of the tour, and I think everybody here is going up to the One World, right? Everybody's going up to the One World. I think you all have tickets to go up to the One World observation deck.
Physical small tickets or?
Oh, I'll be giving them to you. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, I mean, when you order the tour, you all selected the option to go up to the observation deck at One World. So you. And we'll talk about that in just a second. We'll talk about... What's that? Are we going in on that one? Are we going? No.
That would have been a good tour. I wish I knew about that one.
Yeah, right? So I hear you. And the
I wish
time
we did
we
about that
were
one.
traveling by bus, I'm with you. All right, you guys ready to rock? Let's rock and roll. All set? All right, follow me. Did you notice when we met, there's a statue of a gentleman there? Now, we're looking at the back of his head here, but that's George Hohan. Anybody know what he's famous for? He's considered like the father of Broadway. About 70% of the shows are what? They're musicals compared to dramas and comedies, right? 30%, about 70% musical. He's considered the father of American musical comedy theater, right? Give my regards to Broadway. No, I'm not going to sing anymore. I promise. But he's the father of Broadway. And then secondly, over here, this is Father Francis Duffy, a Catholic priest and an army chaplain, one of the most highly decorated chaplains in American history. He was so highly decorated, he was briefly considered to become appointed as a commander of a regiment, even though he was a chaplain. He was such a war hero. When he retired, and this was during World War I, he was briefly considered by General Pershing, head of our American forces over in Europe, to be the commander of the regiment, but they decided, no, we can't have a priest, the commander of a regiment, but he was seriously considered. And when he retired from the military, he ministered here in the Times Square area, so he's kind of a beloved Catholic figure. And you know, our largest single demographic are Catholics, not Irish Catholics, but Catholics, right? So about 40%, 35% of the population of New York lists Catholic as their religion. Okay, all right. Shall we keep walking? All right, follow me. M&Ms. 3 floors.
M&M
now
heaven,
it's the most expensive M&Ms you'll ever buy. But they have nice stuff like souvenirs and stuff you couldn't find anywhere, like T-shirts and coffee cups and toys and stuff with the M&M logo. And right across the street, you can't see it from here, but right across the street from the M&M store is the Hershey store.
Oh, wow.
Right? Right? Understand? Okay.
Write that down.
The red booth here, this is your half-price theater tickets.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to shows that aren't Hamilton, shows that aren't The Lion King, shows that aren't Aladdin. But there's wonderful shows that aren't selling out, so they sell them half-price tickets. You got to wait in line, but they're half-price tickets. Oh. Here we go, everybody. What ladies, and I'm talking to the wives of the men I just mentioned, and while we were walking over here, I had a little discussion with your husbands, and they wanted me to point out these lamps across the street, these street lamps. Everybody see these street lamps? Now, what are they in the shape of? Diamonds. Very good. Maca. No, real diamonds. Real diamonds. So this is the world famous Diamond District. Everybody follow? This is the world famous Diamond District. So you can go here, ladies, and get the best diamonds, gold, silver jewelry, necklaces. But remember, it's cash only. Cash only. Why do they not accept credit cards? Come on, say you're cynical people. We know what you're thinking. You're thinking tax evasion, right? Everybody thinks that. In fact, it's not the case. The reason here, you can negotiate price here. You cannot negotiate price at Tiffany's or Bergdorf Goodman or Macy's or the Apple Store. No negotiation, or Louis Vuitton, right? Here you can negotiate price, but they're not going to pay a percentage to the credit card company. They're not going to pay a processing fee after you negotiated them to a very competitive price. There's one other reason. In theory, once you leave the store, you could, if you paid with credit card, you could call up and try to dispute the charges. That's not going to happen. They are going to have your cash. And if you want to sue them, right, no calling up the credit card company and cashing out, right? You see what I'm saying? That's another reason. Cash and carry, but you get the negotiated price. So is that all right, Mel? Or Chris? Is that all right?
It's all right, yeah.
Right, ladies? Remember, cash only. Get the cash card first.
Cashola.
That's it. To Rockefeller Center. Rockefeller Center's over here. You see these stone buildings, right? Now, Rockefeller Center consists of 19 buildings, constructed from 1930 to 1939 by John D. Rockefeller Jr. Now, how did the Rockefeller family make their mark? How do they make their money?
After the share market crash? By buying low? I don't know. I'm just
No,
guessing.
not so. They had money. They had substantial money long before the stock market crash, which was 1929. But good guess, Chris. Any other guesses?
Steel?
Not Steel. That really was Andrew Carnegie, who started what later became U.S. Steel. But you're getting close. What's the last one? Well, railroads, that was the Vanderbilts. We're going to talk about the Vanderbilts when we get over to Grand Central Terminal. Now, the last one you haven't mentioned is oil. No, real estate is the Astors. John Jacob Astor. You may have heard of the Waldorf Astoria or Astor Place. The Astor family, first family to make $1 million in New York City real estate. But oil, the companies that the Rockefeller family started, known as Standard Oil of Ohio, now are known today as ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil. Everybody follow? Everyone with me? Okay.
Fox News.
Now, what I'm going to say is we're going to visit the stone buildings, because the stone buildings is where you would have during the wintertime, you'd have the ice skating rink. You'd have the Christmas tree, which is very famous. You have all of NBC located, right? The National Broadcasting Company, including the Today Show, which Mel was asking about. Everybody follow? That's what it's most famous for, is its anchor tenant, NBC. But it's a very famous business center. But this is the old portion, right? The new portion begins behind me, this News Corporation building.
News.
You've all heard of Rupert Murdoch, principal of the News Corporation. Here they publish the Wall Street Journal and Fox News, Fox Business. This is our conservative headquarters, if you like, Sean Hannity broadcasts from here. But let me ask you a question. I didn't stop here coincidentally. Can you all see the bust statue of Bart Simpson?
Yeah. I see
Why
it.
is there a bust statue of Bart Simpson?
He represents Fox. The show's on Fox.
That is correct, but more specific. Why are they celebrating this and not Sean Hannity? What is it about The Simpsons? Absolutely correct, John.
Longest running show.
Longest running show on Fox television. It has never been off the air. But it's not the longest running. It's about, I don't know, don't quote me, but I want to say it's like 27, 28 years, something like that. The interesting thing is the longest running show in American television is not The Simpsons, but it's the Today Show. I briefly mentioned that before, and we're going to walk by. They've been on the air since, I think, 1952. 1952. All right. And also you can see the neon sign that says the Radio City Music Hall. Everybody see that? Right? Well, why is it called the Radio City Music Hall?
Rockettes are there.
That is correct. The Rockettes are the world famous dancing chorus line, and they do perform. They have 2 big shows a year. Their big one, of course, is their Christmas Spectacular. But lots of other shows, not just the Rockettes. It's a beautiful Art Deco theater, about 6,100 seats, 5 levels of seating. I mean, if you ever get a chance, put that on your bucket list. It is a wonderful place to watch a performance. But it's called Radio City because when NBC moved here in 1933, I believe, the technology was radio. So by honoring the new technology, the studios at Rockefeller Center, Radio City, right? They decided to honor that movie. They called the movie theater that, named it to honor the new industry. And they didn't change it, right? They didn't change it to Television City Music Hall. So it started Radio City, it remains Radio City. Make sense? All right, we're going to walk on over now to the center of Rockefeller, the Sunken Plaza, where normally there would be ice skating during the wintertime, but now...
Is that where the gold statue is?
Yes, that's correct. We'll be stopping next at the gold statue of Prometheus, the Titan god. We'll be talking about that at our next stop. Very good. This is hitting your itinerary spots, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, follow me, everyone. You can see the neon sign there for NBC Studios, right? In the Art Deco style, right? Of course, Rockefeller Center is constructed in what is known as the Art Deco style, made famous in Paris, France, in the École des Beaux-Arts. I do not speak French, so I apologize, but the School of Beaux Arts, and it's very famous. All of our great skyscrapers in New York are in the Beaux Arts style, like the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and of course, Rockefeller Center. The difference is Rockefeller Center doesn't have a spire, doesn't have a big needle on top like the Empire State and like the Chrysler Building. But they're both, all three are built in the Art Deco style. They were all designed during the Roaring 20s, time of great economic growth, but they were built in the Depression, right? Everybody follow? So there was emphasis on getting these buildings up very quickly. How long did it take to build the Empire State Building? You'd be shocked. 1 year and 45 days. 1 year and 45 days. They built 4 floors a week. In fact, when it opened on May 1st, 1931, they called it the Empty State Building because it was only 22% full of occupants. The Depression, right? So what saved it from bankruptcy? What saved the Empire State Building from bankruptcy? The movie King Kong. Such an international success, people flocked to the observation deck. To this day, during warm weather, good days, they'll get 20,000. They'll average 20,000 a day. They generate nearly $1 billion a year in ticket sale revenues. So they have their own zip code, Empire State Building. But Rockefeller Center is, of course, also very iconic. It's not a single building, it's 19 buildings. And it's famous as a commercial center, famous for really the first, you could say, shopping arcade in America is the underground Promenade, the underground arcade underneath Rockefeller Center. That's argued to have been the first underground shopping mall. Who was? Oh, there you go. Sounds right. Now, normally they have some type of concert Friday during warm weather. So today was, you said, Brad Paisley. That makes sense. The country music star. They have pretty big acts, pretty big acts. And normally it's part of their broadcast. Okay, guys, follow me. Everybody see where the cafe is? Essentially, that's where the ice skating rink is during the winter time. And now I would argue it's a very overpriced cafe. But you're at Rockefeller Center, so you don't expect the drinks to be cheap. But it's quite pricey. But they really can't have it year-round with the summer weather, of course. So that's why it's an outdoor cafe. But this is Prometheus, and it's the artistic centerpiece, I should say, not architectural. It's been described as the 4th most recognizable statue in the United States, only behind the Statue of Liberty, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and what's the third one? Mount Rushmore, out in South Dakota. This has been described as the 4th most recognizable statue, right? And of course, the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree is where you can see the tree, the large-sized plants there, the miniature trees there, where the farmers market is. That's where you have the Christmas tree. 30,000 lights on the Christmas tree. Nice. If you think Times Square is bad, the worst place you'll ever be in New York City in terms of crowds is right here during the tree lighting ceremony. I will never take a group here again. They about crushed me. Make Times Square New Year's Eve look like a picnic in the park. Oh my God, this place is not set up for thousands of people. And always you have a big name performer, you have the Rockettes, and the lighting ceremony, always some VIP. And so it kicks off the holiday season here in New York. Wow. Everyone follow? Yeah. Shall we head up to St. Patrick's, everyone?
Let's go.
Any questions about any of this stuff? All right, let's head on. This is called the Channel Garden. It's named for the English Channel because England is between which two countries? Between England, or I'm sorry, the English Channel is between England and France, right? Well, this building over here is named for France. The building behind me is named for England. So it was only appropriate that the body of water that separates the two, that when they named this garden, they would call it the Channel Garden. Because Rockefeller Center was always an international business center. It wasn't just an American business center. And why do I stop here? Everybody see? Lego Land! Very good, Mel. And in particular, everybody see the statue of Prometheus here? Right? Now, what I love about New York, we know the big stuff, the famous stuff like the Empire State Building and Grand Central Terminal and Central Park. It's big and it's famous for a reason, the Statue of Liberty. But I love the small stuff, like the bust of Bart Simpson, or here, the statue of Prometheus. You don't see this in other places. That's what's so great about being a New York tour guide, is the small stuff, which would be big every place else. Well, welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral. But before I tell you about St. Patrick's, we just came up the Channel Garden, and we're now on 5th Avenue. Now, this particular section of 5th Avenue, starting really about here, you could argue further down, but really from about 50th Street, this is what? Saks 5th Avenue, heading up to along the borders of Central Park there. What do you have? The famous what? What's this section of 5th Avenue famous for? Shopping. What do you guys no look at what we know about American Girl, right? Right? Now, if you look over here at Saks Fifth Avenue, if you come back here in the holiday season, you get about 30,000 people a night walking past these window displays, because that's when New York dresses up in lights. The store designers, the interior designers, will start working on these holiday displays in June and July. All right, also you across the way, a little bit blocked by the leaves, but that is another famous statue. That's the statue of Atlas, Prometheus' half-brother holding up the world, right? Also quite famous statue. Again, all the artwork comes back to Mrs. Rockefeller. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 10 minutes here, a little less than 10 minutes at St. Patrick's. I wish I could give you longer, but we have to keep on time. Now you would just walk right by these buildings and not even notice this. What do you see across the way? See the three lions? Now this is the British Empire building. I mentioned earlier that the buildings often were named for, or sometimes were named for countries like France, Great Britain, and this is the Italian building behind you. So if you look over here, the three lions, they represent Richard the Lionheart, the famous warrior king, right? Over here, who is this famous Italian saint? Patron saint of the animals. Very good, Sharon. Saint Francis. Absolutely correct. Does everyone follow? Saint Francis, right? Saint Francis of Assisi. So I call this War and Peace. See, the artwork will often illustrate the history of the building, right? Everyone follow? Now tell me, you just walk right by, wouldn't even think about it, would you?
No.
Right? This is one reason why you get a tour guide.
Yeah.
In theory, anyways. Are you seeing a religious inscription? Now, this is a reference to the Old Testament, the book of Isaiah. It's a reference to a famous verse talking about turning swords into plowshares. In other words, turning the instruments of war into the instruments of peace. Quite famous if you're into Bible study.
Yes.
But I stop here. Why is there a religious inscription? Now, this is a private commercial complex. It's not a public complex. But still, it's fairly rare where you will see religious references in open to the public buildings, right? Because we have this general theory of feeling of separation of church and state. That doesn't mean you never see a public place without a religious theme, but it's not that common. Now, why would you see a reference? This is a tip of the hat to the Rockefeller family. Rockefeller family were ruthless business people. Ruthless. They would chop your legs out from under you in a heartbeat, take you over. They were monopolists, ruthless business people, most people would say. But in their personal lives, They were very religious. They were strong Baptists, right? They did not drink alcohol. So they were very pious in their personal behavior, right? Everybody follow? So that's why you see it's a tip of the hat to the Rockefeller family.
Actually, I'm starting to notice all the artwork in the different buildings.
Every
if it wasn't for
entrance.
you,
Look
I
over here,
know.
Angela. With the steel sculpture
over
over
there
there, steel
too.
statue. Every entrance has some type of artwork. Every entrance.
I would have never noticed that unless I was hanging out here for a while to look at everything.
Yeah, and that's why I wish, if you have time, go to the website, and they have a section on the history of the artwork.
Okay,
And you can
I will do
download
that.
all the artwork. It tells you the artist, tells you the theme. I mean, the general themes of the artwork are growth, energy, and progress. Those are the general themes of the artwork at Rockefeller Center. Growth, energy, progress. But they're all different types. You got the Greek and Roman, like the Titans of Atlas and Prometheus. You've got references to warrior kings like Richard the Lionheart. You've got references to peacemakers like St. Francis. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to watch our previous video on Central Park featuring the Park Hyatt Hotel. Stay tuned to part 2 of this tour. We start back at the Rockefeller Center, where we catch the subway to Grand Central Terminal. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Thank you so much for watching.